Hello, and welcome to Lesson 5 of Social Studies, Remote Learning, with me, your host, Mr. Appel. I hope this week has been productive for you as we adjust to this temporary reality of learning remotely. Today, we will be learning about where does the U.S. government get its money? This week, we've been talking a lot about the bill that has been going on in Congress, in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Today, the House of Representatives is expected to vote on this bill, and then it will be given to the President for his signature. This bill calls for $2 trillion to be spent. Where does the government get $2 trillion from? How do they make the money? Well, that's what we're going to talk about briefly today. To give you an introduction, money that the government brings in is called revenue. Revenue. The government brings in trillions of dollars in revenue every year. Where does the government get this revenue from? Well, the short answer is taxes. 3 different kinds. Income tax, which is tax on people's salary. Income tax became the law of the land in 1913 with the 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution when it was ratified. It said that you could tax people's income. Income is the money that people make from their job. Okay? So income tax is almost half of the government's revenue. So for instance, as a teacher, the money that I receive is my income, but much of it goes right back to the government. And we talked yesterday about the different levels, the local, the state, and the federal. Well, they each collect income tax. But today we're just talking about the federal, the national level. Then there's corporate income tax, which is when corporations, which is giant companies, are taxed. Corporations like Boeing, McDonald's, Raytheon, Home Depot, any large corporation, they pay taxes. And then there's something called the payroll tax, which is, again, money that people make. They take out a certain amount of that to pay for government programs like healthcare. And then there's other things that are not listed here, like fees that are collected by the government, licensing fees, like if you want to open up a radio station, you have to pay a fee, things like that. Well, where does the money go? Who actually collects the money when it gets collected by the taxes, when it gets collected by the government and all of that? Well, the short answer is the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department. The Treasury Department is part of the United States federal government. The president has a group of people that work for him called the cabinet. And the cabinet has different members who are in charge of different departments of the government. And there's the State Department, which deals with other countries. There's the Labor Department, which deals with workers. There's the Transportation Department, which deals with highways and different transportation, railroads. Well, the Treasury Department deals with the money, okay? And the Treasury Department was created in 1789, so it's one of the original departments. And the first Secretary of the Treasury is someone we've learned about in class, Alexander Hamilton, who has a fascinating story. You can read about it. You can watch the Broadway musical about his life. We've talked a little bit about him. We took a class trip this year to see his grave in Manhattan. You can visit his house in Manhattan, which some students have done on their own. He is basically the one who created the original Treasury Department. And he did such a great job that he was remembered by being placed on the $10 bill. That is a portrait of Alexander Hamilton. And if you switch to the back, that is the U.S. Treasury Department. That's their main building in Washington, D.C. It still looks like that. You can go visit it. That's where the Treasury works. And they have thousands and thousands of employees who work at the Treasury Department. Now, who is in charge of the Treasury Department now? None other than Stephen Mnuchin. Stephen Mnuchin was selected by Donald Trump in 2017. Anybody that the president selects to be in the cabinet must be approved by the Senate. And he was approved by the Senate, and he became the Secretary of the Treasury. The president has the right to fire anyone he wants in the cabinet, and Mr. Trump has done that a bunch of times. But he has not fired Mnuchin. He has been the Secretary of Treasury for the whole time that Trump has been there. And you can get more information about the Treasury Department by visiting their own government website, home.treasury.gov. So what do they do exactly? Well, they decide, again, they decide how to use the tax money as directed by the president and as directed by the House and the Senate. They all have to work together. So like this week, Steve Mnuchin was actually at the Capitol building negotiating with the senators. He's not in the Senate, okay? He works for Donald Trump. He's in the cabinet, but his opinion matters. He's very important, and he was negotiating with the senators. Negotiate means to talk over an issue and work it out together. So he had a very important role this week in getting this bill passed, which supposedly will be voted on today. What does the Treasury do besides figure out how to collect and spend the money? Well, first of all, they have to actually make the money. Money that you use, the coins and the bills that we all use, is called currency, okay? So every country has currency. And those of you who are in my class know that I like to collect different currency. And the United States, we make our the Treasury Department is in control of making our currency, but the specific group that makes the money is called the United States Mint. And they have their own website, www.usmint.gov. The Mint creates the actual money. They make the coins. They make the bills. And if you want to see how they make it, you can go on their website. The U.S. Mint has several different factories where they actually make all these things, the money. One of them is in Washington, D.C. One of them is in Philadelphia, I believe Denver, Colorado, but we can look that up later. So let's look at some currency. The U.S. Mint makes these coins, and you can buy them directly if you want before they reach the public, and you get what's called a proof set. This is what coins look like before they even get put out into the public. So that's a proof set, and it has the dime, the penny, the nickel, the half dollar, and the dollar. Other countries, like I said, they have to have currency also. So I have some other currency examples. This is from the United Kingdom. This is the British currency is called pounds. This is a £5 note from approximately 1992, I believe. So this is actually, you can't use this anymore. But it's got Queen Elizabeth II on one side, and it's got George Stephenson on the other side. Who's George Stephenson? Well, he's the guy who invented trains. So pretty important person from England to be on their currency. Here is some currency from Canada. This is a $1 note, no longer used in Canada. You can't use this anymore. Canada, for those Canadian friends watching, you know you do not have dollar bills anymore. They only use dollar coins. So this is a Canadian dollar note, no longer used, and on the back side they have a picture of the House of Parliament in Ottawa, Canada, which is the capital of Canada, and on the front is Queen Elizabeth. Why would Queen Elizabeth be on Canadian money? She's not the Queen of England. Well, Canada is technically a dominion of England, which means they still have some ties with England. They used to be owned by England, so they still respect the Queen, and they still put her on the money. Here's a $2 bill from Canada, which, again, you cannot get anymore. They don't make them anymore. And by the way, Canada uses English and French because they are a bilingual country. Here is a little note from Burma, a 1 kyat note. Burma is no longer called Burma, in fact, so you definitely can't use this anymore. Here is a 20 franc note from Luxembourg, and you cannot use that anymore because Luxembourg doesn't even use this type of money. And last but not least, some $2 bills from the United States, which people love to collect. They're not worth that much, but people think they're extremely rare. This one is an old one. It comes from 1953. And by the way, all of your money has the Secretary of Treasury's signature right there. Okay? That's up until the modern days. So here's some $2 bills. So what did we learn today? We learned about currency. We learned about the Treasury Department. We learned about revenue. We learned about expenditure. What I want you to do today is find out what is in this stimulus bill. You're not going to read the whole bill because it's 880 pages, and even the senators and House of Representatives members who vote for it probably didn't read the whole thing. But I want you to find, I'll put some links, find out what's in this bill. And you're going to respond in the website. It's not due till Monday because we're taking it easy. We don't want to overwhelm you. But you're going to find out what is in this bill that is being passed by the House today and going to be signed by Trump soon. Where does this money go? And I hope you learned a little bit today about where the government gets its money from. Stay safe. Wash your hands, please, especially if you go outside. Cover your cough. And we'll see you for the next lesson next week. Take care.